The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's event, Saving Pennies, Wasting Dollars. My name is Jimmy Lamb. I'm manager of well, must be Monday, right? Anyway, I'm Jimmy Lamb, manager of education at Sawgrass, and your host for today's presentation. If you tuned in this morning, my apologies. The first session, it didn't go as planned. In other words, it didn't go at all. Definitely had some technical issues, and because of the technical issues, I was unable to broadcast. So my apologies for any inconveniences that it might have caused, and we will just pick up and go this afternoon. So if you weren't here this morning, it really doesn't matter, right? Because you weren't here. So anyway, we'll get started here in just one more minute. Still have a few people coming into the webinar room, and then I'll get the video rolling and we'll go from there. So just give me another couple of minutes and we should be ready to roll. So for any of you that are regulars, you did notice I turned on the webcam. So, I'm doing, I do things with other people, some of the Facebook Lives and whatever else. And what do? We use a webcam. So I said, why not? I'll have it on at least here at the beginning, then I'll switch into the PowerPoint. And I got my nice big bulky headset on, see? And if we hear animals barking in the background, well, that's just our new puppy. Well, say new. We've had her for a couple of weeks now. And sometimes she doesn't know when to shut up. You know how that goes, right? So anyway, sometimes I don't know how to shut up either. Okay, for all those that know how I am. All right, so with that said, I'm going to switch over into the PowerPoint and we will go from there. Okay, looks like everything is set up here. Looks like the recording is going, so it looks like it must be time, right? All right, so today's topic is saving pennies while wasting dollars. One of my favorite subjects. I'm Jimmy Lamb, manager of education at Sawgrass, and your host for this presentation. So let's get rolling. Are you saving pennies or wasting dollars? It's an interesting concept. It really is. But as a successful business owner, you do have to manage costs. There's a whole lot more being a sublimation business owner than just doing the sublimation. Okay, there's a whole lot of other things. As I like to tell people, you happen to be running a business that does sublimation rather than a sublimation business. And there's a difference in what I said. They sound the same, but they're actually different. You do need to focus on the business aspect to be successful in business. Now, obviously, you have to sublimate well, or you're not going to go far in business. But on the day-to-day basis, you have to look at what your costs are. Now, most of us, we're pretty good at knowing what our costs are because we're paying the darn things. But then we have to look a little deeper and say, does this make sense or not? Okay, because a lot of times you are paying something that's really important, and you're looking for a cheaper alternative, and by doing so, you might put yourself in a worse off position. So just because it costs less doesn't mean that it's a better alternative. We want to keep that in mind. And there's more to it than just things that we write checks for, use debit cards or whatever. That's the financial investment. We also have a time investment, and this is one of the things I try to hammer into people, and that is you don't work for free. Because if you do work for free, I have plenty of job opportunities for you. So that means that your time is not free either. And sometimes it's a little hard to grasp that concept at first because the fact you're not paying other people, so you're just working and then hopefully taking some of that money and keeping it for yourself. So that's what I mean by you're not working for free, because that's not really the way to do it, okay? Because if you do it that way, you probably are working for free. So what I mean by that is you do have to account for your time. Your time is part of the costs, and if you can minimize your time, then maybe you're minimizing costs. I mean, you'll see what I'm talking about here in just a minute. So always look at a big picture, okay? Big picture first, price tag second. Make sure that you're making the right decisions. All right, so let's talk about some of those. We're going to start with time is money. Now, if you've been to my pricing and cost analysis webinar or live seminar, then you've seen and heard what I'm getting ready to say. And we're not going down that whole path for pricing. We're just going to touch the very beginning of it. So it's very important to think about when we're actually producing, what is the most expensive part of sublimation production? And a lot of people do say ink, because you write a check or use a credit card to buy your ink, and that can be a big chunk of change if you got to buy multiple cartridges. I understand that. That's an important thing to be realizing what you're doing there. But by the same token, ink is required to be able to produce products. And then when you look at actually what the ink costs per product, it's very, very low. Okay. In fact, when you actually look at what percentage of production ink is, it's about 7% of the overall cost of production of any product, about 7%. So it may be highlighted as a big expense, but at the same time, maybe it's not as big as you think that it is. Okay. Something to think about there. So let's take a little deeper look so you can see what I'm talking about. All right, let's say we have an SG800 printer using SubliJet HD ink, and we're printing this image as an 8-inch by 10-inch full color image on a Poly Performance T. What are the costs of production? Okay, well, the costs of production are far more than ink and paper in Substrate. Okay, you really have to take into account all the costs of your business, which is your overhead. And then you got to factor it down to you can have a usable increment like an hourly charge or per minute charge. And then you can look and see what it costs to produce something. So if you have an overhead of $30 per hour, that's not $30 per hour when you're actually in production. That's always $30 per hour. So every hour is like a ka-ching sound that's $30 per hour. If you did one item, I don't care what it is. If it's a bag tag and you did one, over the course of an hour, it costs you $30 to produce it. Simple as that. I don't care. Size of it, the ink, any problems that you had. I'm just telling you, if you did one against a $30 overhead, it costs you $30 to make that sucker. If you did 10 of them, they cost $3 each. So you see where I'm going with that? Okay, this is very important to understand. Most of us don't know what the hourly operational charge is. And I'm not going to go down all that path today because we're sort of going in a different direction, but I will tell you that you can go into our resource area on the Sawgrass website and you can look for my pricing and cost analysis webinar. So if you go into resources and then you look for webinars and webcasts, you will find it in there. And it will explain everything in the video and has a spreadsheet so you can work it out and figure out what your cost per hour is. Okay, so moving on past that, we're using $30 per hour as my example. If it took you 1 minute to print and 1 minute to press at 50 cents a minute, your production cost, in theory, is $1, okay? Because you use 2 minutes of time at 50 cents per minute. However, the reality is there are other things that take up time as well, like setting up the job. All right, so here, just getting a shirt from a box onto the heat press is going to take you a little bit of time. If you have to go late on the heat press and put out your foam and then change your settings, you easily got at least 5 minutes of setting up this job, maybe more. Okay, at 50 cents a minute, it's just $2.50. And then when you take the shirt off the heat press, you have to pull off your blowout sheet and pull off the transfer paper and hold it up and inspect it and then let it cool just a little bit and do some paperwork if it's just a one-piece item. And if that took another 5 minutes, that's another $2.50. That's $6 total when you include the actual production costs. So we have two different things going on: production cost, downtime cost. Okay, downtime is all that time when you're not producing. To be honest, with sublimation, the only time that you're really making money is when you're printing and pressing. Okay. And really, if you want to break it down to just pure pressing, I like to say when the heat press is open, you don't have any money coming out. You just have heat coming out. When it's closed, it's generating revenue. So your production process has one part that generates revenue, but the rest of the production process, setup time, post-production time, those are downtime factors still required to do the job, but it's downtime because the heat press is open. Okay. So downtime costs you just as much as runtime. So that's very important to understand, because initially, if you just looked at this, it looks like it's $1 for printing and pressing, but you got to put in all that downtime cost. So it really totaled out $6 to do that one shirt minimum. And then if you compare it to ink and media, meaning transfer paper, the ink cost for that job was 42 cents. The media cost, transfer paper, was 20 cents. Okay. Total is 62 cents. So looking at this example, which one is going to give you the better cost savings? Buying your ink for half price, sorry, it's not being offered, but buying your ink for half price brings down your ink cost to 21 cents, or shaving in half that downtime, that is going to have a much bigger savings. Now, it's sort of an abstract number because you're still sitting here thinking maybe that your time is free, but it's not. Okay, in the long run, it's not, because when you do have enough sales to actually generate a decent income, this is going to be major. If you only have a couple of sales a week, right now you probably don't care, okay? But I'm trying to get you in the mindset of what you need to do to make money as a business owner, and where maybe we're wasting money worrying about sometimes the wrong thing. So for that particular shirt, once it's all said and done, the one I showed you there to begin with, it was 42 cents worth of ink at 7% of the production cost, not including the blank shirt. All right, so this is very important because we need to be able to structure our operation and what we do in such a way as to make the most efficient use of our time, so we print the most possible units per hour against that overhead. And I'm going to be honest with you, this is one of the things you probably don't want to hear. It costs a lot more to do one piece than it does to do, say, 6 pieces. And the reality becomes this: when you look at your setup time, which I call pre-production or just pre, and you look at your post-production time, those are about the same for one piece as 6 pieces, because those are per job, they're not per piece. And the reality, I went to 15 minutes here instead of 5 because we got to have to set up our artwork probably, and there may be a little bit more to getting the job rolling. If you really got to go more than 15 minutes to set up somebody's artwork, then you probably need to be charging them an art charge. And all of my art charges, I've always based them on an hourly charge with a 1 hour minimum. Even if it only took me 15 minutes, it's based on an hourly 1 hour minimum. Simple as that. Whatever your hourly charge is, you determine that. But in reality, the more time you have setting up and processing stuff, the more time it adds to the job, and it's production time that's required but not generating revenue. Okay, the only thing that generates the revenue here is why I have actual time. So let's just look at a one-piece job. If it took 15 minutes to set it up, 2 minutes to print and press, and then our post-production time was another 15 minutes, it's a total of 32 minutes against an hourly cost of $30 per hour. That means that item cost $16 to produce. Didn't include the blank cost. It took $16 to produce. If I had 6 items and I still had the same setup time, because the setup's about the same regardless of the number. Okay, 15 minutes there. Now it's actually going to run, 12 minutes of revenue generating time and then 15 minutes of downtime. Total of 42 minutes in there against a hourly cost of $30 per hour. It comes out to $3.50 each. So look at the big change there, okay, because it had to do with the time factor. And so what I'm getting at here, the whole purpose of what we're talking about here is being as efficient with your time as you can, okay, because time can kill you, okay, it can kill you, especially when you're getting bigger. Once you get to a point you have employees and all that, because you're paying a lot more out the door, all these things become very, very important. So understanding and managing that time will save you far more money than anything else as your business is growing into a legitimate business that's generating an income for you, okay? So keep these things in mind. Very important stuff to understand there. Okay. Now, let's apply this to one more example real quick, because I just want to throw in one more little piece of downtime. Okay. Let's say we're going to do 12 plaques. Again, $30 per hour. Let's say it's a 2-minute print and press times 12 pieces at 50 cents per minute. It comes out to $12 of revenue producing time printing and pressing. Well, we all know that you're printing and pressing, but you got to take something off and put something else on the heat press. So there's just natural downtime between each piece. Remember, I'm doing 12 plaques here. So what if we had a minute between each plaque? So we open our heat press, which stops our production. We take off our blowout sheet. We pull off our transfer paper, and we get that plaque off the heat press, and we put the next one on, get it all lined up, and close the heat press. If you can do that in 1 minute, that's what I call substrate swap time. So if we got multiple pieces, we have that going on too, right? So you can see that there. I have my setup time, my post-production, and my substrate swap time. So my grand total of numbers was $21, but it's also 12 plaques we're dealing with. So we got $21 there we have, for downtime, we have $12 of true production, comes out to $33. Okay, so our true production cost is $33. And if you divide that by 12, it's $2.75 for the production of each one. Again, remember, overhead. You got to calculate your overhead, and your overhead is taking into account everything that it costs to run your business. Okay, everything that it costs to run your business. And it's not just your paycheck, but it's everything in there, everything. And that's what you figure out with my spreadsheets in that other webinar, which, like I said, you can find online and check it out. So if you're looking for a way to reduce downtime, that's going to save cost. It's going to save money, but you want to make sure you're doing it the smart way. If you're cutting corners or focusing on things that don't make a lot of difference, you're going to waste dollars while trying to save pennies. And that's what my whole point here is. Okay. So we're going to look at some more examples of things here about reducing downtime, for example, and then we'll look at all kinds of other things too, where we may be wasting some money. So if downtime is so important in production, then a good way that we can save money on that, because it's something we can control within reason, we can control, is to stage your work to maximize that runtime. Remember, we want to minimize downtime and maximize runtime. So anything we can do to keep things rolling actually will save you money, okay, because you'll get more pieces per hour. So I look at jobs and I start thinking about not just what job is next, but does it break down into multiple jobs? Because think about this. If you go from doing metal, okay, to doing ceramics, you're going to have to reset your heat press because of the thickness. A ceramic tile is a lot thicker than a metal, panel. So one thing we got to do is we got to reset our heat press. We may have to reset our time as well on the press. Something else we got to dial in, because ceramics, we usually cook them longer than we do with metal. So every time we got to make changes at our heat press, we're incurring some downtime by doing that. So what if you look across, say, 5 different jobs upcoming and start pulling the common pieces or common substrates out of each one, and then reorganizing all the jobs by the substrate rather than by the owner, okay, or the customer. And so the way I break it down is my first level breakdown is thickness. I try to do everything that's the same thickness back to back to back. And then I look at material, because of the fact of different materials may have different temperature settings. And then I'll even look at size as well, because that's another thing to think about. How many pieces can we put under the heat press at the same time? Okay, which makes really good sense until you do it the dumb way. We'll see that in just a moment. So moving along, what if we had 3 clients here? And you can see client A, client B, client C, and you can see the products that they have, right? So if you did client A and then you went to client B and then to client C, you would actually probably incur a lot of downtime with your adjustments of your heat press and whatnot. What if, on the other hand, we look at all 3 jobs and we break it down by substrate? And we do all the iPhone covers together. We do all the metal license plates together, all the wood plaques together, et cetera, et cetera. Now, artwork can slow you down pretty fast. And one of the things that I've traditionally done with artwork is I try to take time, say at the end of the day, usually after hours, to schedule my artwork for the next day, so that I'm not having to create the artwork while I'm printing and pressing, but I'm just pulling it out of the computer if possible. So there's a lot of things you got to think about. But, especially something like t-shirts, when you got to put the foam in and all the settings and everything you got to do, really you want to do, once you start doing shirts, you just want to do shirt after shirt after shirt after shirt. So, think it through and see if you can shorten that. And literally, this is the kind of way I think, is I can do this very easily using paper instead of a computer. And here's an invoice, okay, for somebody. And that invoice has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different types of substrates, okay? So now I'll look over here and I say, this is like 5 sub jobs, or, because it's one big job, but it's got 5 different components. So I can simply go and make a copy on my printer and have 5 different copies, because the thing is, every one of these is identified by the customer up at the top. But then you take the yellow highlighter and you highlight, okay, this is the one we're going to highlight the mugs here, highlight the t-shirts here, etc. So you highlight each one. So it's like an independent job. And then I actually break up all the substrates, and put them into laundry baskets because I like them better in cardboard boxes. You can see inside a laundry basket by looking at it from the side. And what do I do on the outside? As I tape that work order on there that is identifying what the pieces are in here and who they came from, who the master work order is. And then what I have is I got a basket full of one kind of substrate, another basket of another substrate. You see what happens is you have a whole bunch of baskets all over the floor now. But then you take all the iPhone baskets and put them together, and you take all the T-shirt baskets and put them together, and you work through them that way. I mean, this is simple, low-tech stuff that can actually work on a big scale, especially if you have nice shelving. Okay, but that's just one of those thought processes. Okay, and think about that, because only thing we're trying to do here is get more pieces per hour, because the production cost goes down when I get more pieces against that overhead. That's all I'm trying to do here. That's a great way to save money. Okay. And just make sure when you're doing it though, that you don't somehow increase the time instead of reducing it. So that's what I'm saying. You got to think this through and you got to try it out, because you might think, hey, this is really cool because Jimmy told me it was in a webinar. And then by the time you laid it all out, you found out you spent too much time laying it out so that it's actually costing you more money. So that's when you're saving pennies while wasting dollars. But if you can lay it out and actually do it faster, then you are saving dollars. Okay. So that's just important to think it through. Does that work for you or not? Okay. And sometimes a stopwatch is a great way to check things out. You want to get everything that way. You want to have things like in your shop where it's in hand's reach and you always know where stuff is. So it's not a clutter. So everything is easy to get to and you keep things moving along. I'm telling you, got to keep that stuff moving. Okay. So anything you can do that way is smart to do. All right. So let's look at some of the other things that people do, like media. Okay. We always find it wise to try and put as many things on a single sheet of paper as you can. Okay. At 20 cents a sheet, paper does add up, and it's higher, a bigger sheet of paper. That's like an 8.5 by 11. It's about 20 cents. Okay. But I've also watched people go nutso where they spend like 15 minutes trying to figure out how many things they can get on a single sheet of paper so they can save, a few pennies. Did that make sense? No. Okay. If you can quickly and easily do this, do it. Okay. And even better is when you put multiple images on one sheet of paper, make sure they're all the same type of substrate. They don't have to be the same image, the same type of substrate. Because you see there, we got like 5 coasters. The beauty of this is I could take 5 coasters and tape them down pretty darn quick on that paper and put them under the heat press and do 5 at once. Now, if one of those was a ceramic coaster and one was a plastic coaster, different thicknesses, we cannot press them together at the same time. So we have to get out the scissors and start cutting the paper up. You see what I'm talking about? You don't want to have to cut the paper because it's adding more time. But if it takes you so long to organize and figure it out, then don't even bother. Just print one per sheet. I know you feel like you're wasting an astronomical amount of money, but you got to think of that whole time factor. Now, if you haven't been using our Virtuoso Print Manager, don't fully understand how to use it, our Virtuoso Print Manager, and that's, the printer driver color manager software that runs the SG400, SG800, and the VJ628, even though the VJ can also run off a RIP. That does have a layout feature where it will attempt to put as many images on a single sheet of paper as possible. In fact, it'll put it, it'll load up each sheet, and it might take multiple sheets to do the job, but it's trying to, as you can see right here, put as many images on one sheet of paper as it can to utilize the paper. So the beauty of that is it only takes a second for it to do it, a whole lot quicker than you. Okay. And, look at those kind of tools. If in Creative Studio, when you're outputting, you can actually set it up when you're outputting to do that multiple images on the same sheet of paper. So there's different ways you can do it. But if you get into there and you spend too much time, even in Creative Studio, there's ways that you can create individual images and then you can save them on what's called a blank canvas and rearrange them very carefully. Watch the time factor. Okay. Watch the time factor. Use the tools that you have to make it go faster, or don't do it at all, because sometimes the paper is cheaper than the time it takes to do it. Preparing substrates. Every time we go to sublimate, we don't need to take shortcuts to save time. Some things that we have to do that take time make sense, okay? Securing the paper to the substrate. If you do not secure the two together, there's a good chance you'll get ghosting. You cannot fix ghosting. You have to replace it. Two bad things happen here. If something ghosts, I have the loss that's from the, I'm saying that the wrong way. I have a cost on having to replace the loss of a product that got messed up. Does that make sense? Okay. So the reality is, if I get ghosting, I'm going to have to toss it and make a new one. So there's a cost there, just of replacing the substrate. Then I also wasted ink, and I wasted paper, and I wasted my time. So sometimes it gets a little tedious to put tape down and whatnot, and sometimes we take shortcuts because we think we can, and a lot of times we succeed, and then we get that ingrained in our head. Oh, I saved time. You know, I became more efficient, and then we mess one thing up. Okay, you know, take the time to secure your products, because you need a good quality product when you do it. Most of the stuff we're doing with tape, there are sprays. Sprays work great for soft goods, okay, but they don't always work for hard goods. In fact, I've only found one that works pretty well on most hard goods, and that's the Albatross 1077. That 3M spray mount that you see there from Scotch, you can find it almost anywhere, but I would never use that except on a t-shirt. By the way, you don't spray it on the shirt, you actually spray it on the transfer. But I have experimented with the Albatross 1077 and had some pretty decent luck with some hard substrates. And to me, the spray is quicker and easier to use than the tape. That's just my personal opinion, okay? But make sure you're using the right products, get the job done, take the time to do it. Yeah, it added some to the cost, but taking that kind of shortcut doesn't help. Same thing when you're dealing with fabric, especially apparel. Take that lint roller and roll the entire surface that will be under the heat press each and every time. Don't skimp on that. It's easy to do, okay? So those are two key things for preparing our substrates, and of course taking the plastic off, which is easy to forget because you can't see it half the time. Always having the right tools to get the job done, okay? And this is more than just having it at hand. This is buying the right tools too. It's a business, not a hobby. I mean, invest in what you need to do the job the right way, okay? Or you will shortchange yourself from the very beginning. You know, people look at the cost of equipment and they immediately start going into a mode of how can we find it cheaper, et cetera, et cetera. Buy the right tool. This is about making money. If you just want to have a hobby, buy the cheapest thing you can, okay? But if you want to be able to make money, then you're going to have to invest in the right thing, which may make your heart skip a few beats, okay? But really, if you buy a real cheapo computer, for example, and you start having multiple crashes because you didn't spend enough money to buy the right thing and you overloaded it, you know what? You didn't benefit yourself one iota. So everything that you're buying has to do the job the right way. You know, buy the right heat press. This is usually the most expensive component of all. And this is the one that has that, you know, that sticker shock that people get. If you go buy a good quality unit, it will last you maybe longer than you'll be in business. So there are some really good quality American-made heat presses out there that have good warranties, good service and support. And if your heat press doesn't work, your business doesn't work. And if you have a cheap heat press, it can affect the quality of what you're doing. So if you have bad quality coming out of that heat press, all you did was waste money. I don't care how cheap you got it. You wasted money because you bought the wrong thing. This is a long-term return on your investment or long-term ROI. Okay, it's gonna take a while to pay it back when you really think about it. But the other thing that I've learned, listen, I started as an embroiderer. You want to talk about expensive equipment? You know, my first entry-level machine was $25,000. Okay, so I had to actually go to the bank, borrow the money, give them a business plan, all kinds of details. But the point is, if you buy the right thing, okay, no matter how much it costs, if you buy the right thing, 6 months from now, you'll not ever even be thinking about how much it costs you to buy it. Okay, all you're thinking about is how well it's performing and where's my next job. If you bought the wrong thing, I don't care how cheap you got it, every day you'll be saying, man, I bought the wrong thing. What a waste of money. Don't be there. Buy the products you need to get the job done, the tools, okay? You know, if you look at like 3 heat presses here, and they're all the same, well, the one on the right's actually a little bigger, but the 2 on the left, or the center and the left, you know, you can get a clamshell press for $400, you know, 16 by 20. You get it for $400. Right now, I see them at $399. Clamshell is not really the best thing for sublimation. Nothing wrong with it for sublimation, except it doesn't do thick things very well, and we end up doing a lot of thick things. So a swing away is a better job, a better tool for the job. It costs a lot more. That particular one's 1,600. I know of one that's 2,100 that I think is a fantastic one. At the end of the day, those are good quality units. If it don't work out for you, you can sell it online and get back most of what you paid for it if you bought a really good one. If you bought a really good one, it will not cause you problems. When you have a quality issue with your printing and pressing, you can pretty much guarantee it's not the heat press because you bought the right thing. When you bought one that's really inexpensive and has a language learned maybe you don't understand, there's a good chance that it's going to have issues. It's not going to have accuracy and temperature. It's going to have warped platens over time. There's just so many different things that can go wrong. Buy what you need to get the job done. I don't care what it costs. Buy the right product, okay? Because then you won't worry about it anymore. You buy the wrong one. I tell you, tons of people that bought the wrong heat press thought it was a lot of money to spend $400, $500, $600 until it messed up on them, and then they had to go get another one, and now they have to spend more money. But they did finally buy the right one the second time around. You're probably going to spend $1,500 on up. Probably anywhere from $1,500 to about $2,300 to buy a really good quality heat press. But I'm telling you, you buy the right one, you made the right decision. It's going to last you. You're going to get out of it what you need out of it, and just do it right the first time. Okay. I hear people say all the time, well, I'm just going to start out really cheaply till I see how it works out. Well, sometimes it doesn't work out because you didn't have the right thing to begin with. Blowout sheets, something that we use every day, and sometimes we forget to use it, or we convince ourselves we don't need it. But you're working with the gas, and that gas does have a tendency to sneak out from underneath and do things and go places and get on stuff that you don't want it to. So most of the time when you buy a heat press, it comes with something called Teflon. Everybody says, oh, this is nice stuff. And they use the Teflon for the next 3 years. The problem is Teflon gets old. I mean, it starts to get cracks in it. It gets dirty. It'll get ink in it. And as soon as you get any type of dirt or ink on your Teflon, there's a good chance you're going to transfer it on to another product. Okay. And so you always need to inspect that Teflon. And as soon as you're starting to see any kind of buildup on it or any cracks or anything, you need to get rid of it. It doesn't last forever. What we usually recommend is use parchment paper or newsprint, that type of paper. Now, that's where you're going to look at it and say, well, wait a minute. That costs money because you use a new sheet of paper every time. Absolutely you do. And you know what else? When you pull that paper off, you'll notice there's ink on it too most of the time as well because it picked up some ink. The whole purpose of the blowout sheet, it really has one simple purpose: to keep any stray ink from getting on the platen or the heat press, because any stray ink on the platen can transfer to the next product. So the idea is to keep the ink from getting on the platen, and then also making sure if it gets on the platen, it keeps it from getting on the next product. When you're using the paper, you use the sheet one time and you throw it away. One time, throw it away. And you're like, that's a lot of money. I think I'm just going to buy a sheet of Teflon. But see, Teflon doesn't last forever. And it doesn't protect. And all you need is just one good burst of ink on there, and you've already ruined the Teflon. You're done. So I would use the paper because it's a very cheap alternative to replacing substrates. And if you buy it online, sheets of this stuff, I mean, if you go search, you can find. You don't have to have nice paper. Just get paper, okay? Newsprint, parchment paper, butcher paper, the stuff you wrap your dishes in when you move. You can buy these stuff online for like 0.00001 cents a sheet, when you're buying a big box of it or whatever. So, do that one right. Use your blowout sheets. Transfer paper, people start shopping around. Hey, it's a few pennies cheaper if I buy it there per sheet, which adds up over time. Yes, it does. I agree 100%. But keep in mind that all transfer paper is not created equally. And different papers absorb and release ink differently. And when you change papers, you may see a change in your colors. Not huge, but you can see a change because it has to do with the saturation of the ink in the paper and being released. So you have to be careful when you start changing brands of transfer paper, because now these files that you've saved are not printing exactly the same as they did before because of the paper. Find a good quality paper right from the beginning and stick with it for everything. You can use the same brand on everything. And a lot of people do that. They just, whatever they came with their printer is what they stick with, but don't go messing around with your paper. Okay. Just stick with the paper and then use it try to maximize the use of it without going crazy, and just stick with it. Color management. This takes time, but it can save you a lot of time. And that is to actually start printing out test palettes of color on substrates that you actually use every day. Well, it takes time to set up a test palette, and you got to spend not only time, but you got to spend the ink and the paper and the substrates to actually print these out. But when you start printing out some of these color palettes of some of the, the more common ink colors that you're using, you know what it's going to look like. And what you see on the screen is rarely correct, because screens do not typically show you true color. They only show you an electronic variation of that. The only way you see true color is when you print and press it onto that final product. So when you build palettes, if you look at an electronic palette online, it's never the right color, okay, because you're not seeing it true. But when you've actually printed it out onto something and you have it as a reference, and I'm talking about paper because you got to press it too before you see the color. When you're printing out palettes like that with RGB codes underneath, then you're seeing what that color really looks like. And now you have that visual reference to be able to quickly choose the right colors for the job instead of doing a whole lot of trial and error. But to make palettes takes time, costs money, but it's worth spending the money. Okay. For example, if you're using VPM, it has a palette manager. Learn how to use that. We have videos online about that. It's a great way to do spot color matching and line things up. Because if you go in and you press something for a customer and the color's wrong, they're not going to take it. Okay, now it's going to cost you a lot of time and money to recover. So you need to understand how your color management tools work and then use them so you can minimize rejects and minimize wasted time trying to figure out the right color. You set your tools up the right way. The first time you do it, it's going to cost you dollars. Okay. But the second and third time you use some of these tools, it's going to save you dollars. It's going to be a big difference. That's just another tool. Utilize it. The same thing goes to marketing. This is some of the production, but it amazes me at some of the things that I watch people do. I mean, people give me business cards all the time, and I look at them and I'm like, you're kidding me, right? Everything you do is about getting the best price and, of course, making a sale. And my favorite little phrase is marketing equals margin, because if you market properly, okay, if you do market properly, then you will generate decent margins, okay, once you really learn the process. And I do lots of webinars on that. We're not going to talk about that today, but I do lots of webinars on that to try and get you thinking that way. So you have to take a look at it, and you need to look at the cost of what you're spending, and sometimes you've got to spend money. Other times we're trying to save money, but it's really costing us money. It's costing us a lot more than it's saving because it's leaving a bad impression on people, okay? So an example of this would be domains and email, okay? That's how you introduce yourself. Everything's about the internet, right? So people look at domains, whether it's in your email address or you have a website or whatever else. Having a domain name and actually building a website, getting around to it, that make all the difference in the world. And same thing with an email address, okay? Now look at these 3 email addresses. Jimmy@gmail.com. Really? Okay. That doesn't say, that's like my personal email, right? Which, by the way, it's not. And then you have the ones that they have their business name at Hotmail or Gmail or AOL or NetZero, like Jimmy Inc. at hotmail.com. The best thing is Jimmy@mybizdomain.com. Okay. So, I actually own quite a few different domains, but, for example, I own jimmylamb.net. Okay. But the reality is when you have your name at yourbusinessname.com, you look so much more professional, and you put together your business the right way. And a lot of people say, well, how do you do that? And how much money does that cost? It's called GoDaddy. Okay, GoDaddy.com. Go buy your domain name and then set up mailboxes. It's really easy to do because you can set it up where it interfaces with Microsoft Office, which a lot of us use Office and Outlook in Office, so that your email comes out and goes out and comes back in with Jimmy at my business domain name that I bought.com. I'm telling you, it makes an impression. When people look at your business card, they will make assumptions about you within about 5 to 7 seconds based on that business card. And a lot of people will make a decision very quickly by looking at the business card, whether they even want to work with you or not. So you need to have a business. You don't have to have anything crazy. People are looking at certain things that say, I am a legitimate business. I'm here to help. I'm here to stay. Okay. And people look at domain names. They look at email addresses. Oh, they look at other things too, like street addresses, okay? Because most people that work from home don't put a street address for multiple reasons, okay? But when there's no street address, and worse yet, no city, state, or anything, it's like, do you exist? Do you not want to be found? I'm even seeing business cards without phone numbers on them. All they'll have is like an Etsy address. Really? I will not deal with anybody that I cannot find them, okay? So if you're not giving me that information, I'm not buying from you, because I've run into enough people who, rip me off. But I'm just saying is, you want to make sure people are able to easily contact you. You want your business card to pretty much state who you are and what you do. Okay. But you don't have to be crazy, and it needs to be legible. Get so tired of ones that have people, old English and it's 2 points, in size. You can't read any of it. Okay. You got to be able to read it too. When you go to build business cards, there are some great sites now online where you can design your own and do a good job, because they do the printing. So they send you the professional card when it's done. So take the time and look around at some different cards and try to figure something that works out. For example, I like colored cards, except for the fact that a lot of times when I'm working with somebody, I want to write some information on the card. And if you use a really dark color card, like that blue one there, well, there's actually two of blue, it's really hard to write on it, and people actually be able to read it. But I do like the fact that, I think it adds a little bit of pizzazz having the color. So I'm not knocking it. Just keep in mind, some dark cards are really hard for people to write and make notes on. So be careful of that. And don't try to print them yourself with your own printer. Just go ahead and there's a couple of different companies online do a fantastic job of doing the printing for you. You go and work on setting it up. Have other people look at it and help you figure it out. What looks cute to you may not look cute to anybody else. So, take your time. I mean, business cards, you should strive to give out. I have a friend, her goal was to give out 1,000 business cards a month. And people are like, "Whoa, that costs a lot of money if you got to buy 1,000 a month." Well, yeah, but she buys them, like 5 to 10,000 at a time. But her whole point was, don't hold on to the business card. You want to put as many of them out there so people see them. Even though a lot of people think business cards old fashioned, but the reality is, it is a way of, distributing information and connecting with other people. So that becomes, something else that's important for you to do to get it out there. Okay. Think about how you look. Think about, how you respond to people, all that stuff. Okay. Don't save money here. That's what I'm trying to say. Don't save money here. Build it up the right way. And then really at the end of the day, focus on the results. I mean, just look at what you do. Each thing that you do, you look at, what does it cost me to do, but what is my return? Okay. So if I spend $1, what do I get back? What do I save? What do I gain? But make sure you look at the big picture, because we get too short-sighted when we're just looking at a dollar symbol. So don't be short-sighted is my whole point. Okay. You want to focus on saving dollars, not saving pennies. Okay. So that's a very important thing. So those are just a few of my tips and thoughts for the day. If you have questions, great time to ask, and I'll be glad to take those.